Hey everybody, Smart Silver Stacker here. Hope you're doing well. So there are some big moves afoot right now in the precious metals markets. We've got the creation of a U.S. sovereign wealth fund, which may involve the revaluation of U.S. gold reserves to the tune of hundreds of billions of dollars. On top of that, we may also witness the first audit of those gold reserves for the first time in many decades. Now, currently, the implications of these developments are not entirely clear, but one thing that is apparent is that the impact on the price of gold and the price of silver could be quite significant. In fact, depending on how things play out, it's even possible that this could crash the gold price. Now, that is far from certain, and there's also some potential bullish implications. We'll talk about those in today's video. But anyway you cut it, these are developments that stackers should definitely have on their radar. So let's get to it. Buy your gold and silver at SD Bullion. Right now, new customers can get gold or silver at spot by visiting sdbullion.com/new. Okay, so before we get into the news today, let's just take a quick look at the charts of gold and silver, because if you ask me, these are sending a clear signal. Yesterday, we had gold close once again at a record all-time high. The gold price finished the day at $29.35. We also had a fairly bullish development for silver. That is, we had the highest closing price since October. The silver price yesterday closed at $32.85. And then today, we even pushed above $33. Now, at the time I'm recording this video, the gold price and the silver price have both pulled back slightly from those highs, but nonetheless, it appears that the bull market in gold and silver is alive and well. Now, the good news is, with gold breaking out to record all-time highs, that no matter how high the gold price goes, just about anybody can still become a stacker with these new Florida 1/2 gold-backed notes. You can now buy physical gold bullion in increments of 1/2000th of a troy ounce. You can pick these up over at SD Bullion. And yes, I'm aware that these have a premium, just like all fractional gold bullion, but still, you can buy physical gold for just a few bucks. So that is definitely good news for stackers. Okay, now let's talk about gold revaluation and what exactly that entails. So this whole story came about as a result of President Trump signing an executive order which creates a U.S. sovereign wealth fund, and then some comments made by Secretary of the Treasury Scott Bessent regarding what he called monetizing the asset side of the U.S. balance sheet.
We're going to monetize the asset side of the U.S. balance sheet for the American people. We're going to put the assets to work, and I think it's going to be very exciting.
Now, one asset that immediately came to the mind of many when he made that statement was the U.S. gold reserves. Now, allegedly, the U.S. has the largest gold reserves on the planet. I know there's a lot of talk about whether or not the gold is actually there. We'll talk about that in just a moment. But on paper, the U.S. has 261,498,926.241 troy ounces of gold in reserves. That's the number from the U.S. Treasury. But the thing is that currently on the U.S. Treasury balance sheet, that gold is valued at a statutory rate of $42.22 per troy ounce, which gives it a market cap of just over $11 billion. Now, let's do a little math here and let's see what a revaluation to today's market price could actually entail. So 261,498,926.241 troy ounces. Don't forget that 0.241. If we multiply that by today's gold price, now I mentioned that yesterday the gold price closed around $29.35. I think it's slightly lower than that right now, but we'll just use that number. By the time any of this revaluation actually takes place, it'll probably be higher than that anyway. That would give the U.S. gold reserves a market cap. Now, I had to display it in scientific notation here on the calculator, but that's over $760 billion. So that's an increase of more than 6,000% from the current valuation, and it would give the U.S. a sudden injection of more than $700 billion of liquidity. But the question is, what does this actually mean? Now, Scott Bessent said that they were going to monetize the asset side. That could mean converting those assets into money. Does that mean selling the gold? Well, that is one possible scenario, and that is the scenario in which you could see a crashing gold price globally. If the US actually tried to sell off some of its gold reserves, and I don't know what they would buy with that, maybe cryptocurrency or digital assets or something to put into this sovereign wealth fund, that could actually lead to a significant downturn in the gold price. One of the factors that has been driving gold to record all-time highs has been purchases by China and other central banks around the world. So if the US starts dumping gold, well, that could see the gold price crash. But that's not necessarily what monetizing the asset means. Another scenario is that they may simply keep the gold and just mark it to market on their balance sheet. That would actually improve the US balance sheet significantly. It would increase the ratio of assets to debt. And in that case, that would actually allow the US to issue even more debt and to borrow more, because they could say, well, we have these assets to borrow against. Now they're worth 6,000% more than they were. And in that case, that would actually be significantly bullish for the price of gold. Unfortunately, it also would probably mean the price of just about everything will be going up. It would almost be like quantitative easing without having the Fed coming in and buying $700 billion worth of bonds. Instead, they just borrow against the new $700 billion worth of gold and create a bunch of debt. So in that case, it would be bullish for gold. I think it's also important to note that the implications of this in terms of U.S. debt are somewhat meaningless, considering the fact that we're $36 trillion in the hole. The interest on the U.S. national debt now exceeds $1 trillion. So $700 billion, these days, that's not even much more than a drop in the bucket. Unfortunately, that's how crazy things have gotten. And I know that, this all seems like speculation, but the reality is that there's so many events happening here. We've got trade wars, tariffs, potential gold revaluation, geopolitical shifts. You got a global debt crisis. It's hard to say how all of this is going to play out, but the potential impact on the gold price is quite significant one way or the other. One thing that I've heard speculation about from Josh Fair, he's the CEO of Scottsdale Mint. He's been covering this story extensively on his Twitter. And one thing that he's speculated about is all of the gold and silver inflows that we have seen recently into the U.S. That has been attributed to fears of tariffs, but he thinks that it could actually be something more than that. It could be repatriation of gold from around the world, or possibly even the U.S. adding new gold to its reserves. Now, that seems relatively low probability, but this is still an important scenario to consider because the magnitude of such a development would be so huge. I mean, if the U.S. is adding to gold reserves, it means that they are preparing for something. What could that be? Well, that could be a global currency reset. And again, this seems like a low probability event, but given the fact that all of the fiat currencies around the world are being devalued at a rapid rate, and all of the respective governments that control the issuance of those fiat currencies are drowning in massive unpayable levels of debt, some kind of a massive global financial crisis or global reset is inevitable. It could be that they're just trying to get ahead of that. Now, we've talked about this type of event in the past. What would it mean for the gold price? Well, let's say you were to back up the entire M2 money supply of the United States with those 261 million ounces of gold. Well, you would need a gold price of more than $80,000 per ounce. One argument I often hear regarding having a gold-backed currency is that, there's just not enough gold to do it. But the reality is that there's always enough gold. Doesn't matter how much there is. You just need a high enough gold price, and you can back up any amount of fiat currency with your gold. So again, a low probability event, but potentially extremely high magnitude. We're going to find out in the coming weeks, months, and years what they have in store for the U.S. gold reserves. It's important to note that none of this really matters if the gold isn't there in the first place. And there's been endless speculation in the comments section on this channel, on the interwebs for, decades and decades regarding the actual existence of the gold in Fort Knox and other depositories. The last time that the gold was audited was back in the 1970s, and that wasn't really even a true audit. They just opened one vault, and it was kind of a photo op for journalists to show that there actually were some things that looked like gold bars. They didn't actually open the vault, audit it, examine serial numbers or anything like that. So I don't even know when the last time an event like that has taken place of all of the U.S. gold reserves, but it's not in my lifetime. And so, if the gold isn't there, you can imagine what kind of an impact that might have on global precious metals markets. It could be huge if they find out that somehow the U.S. gold reserves have been plundered. I mean, that seems like it could send the price of gold and silver skyrocketing. Leave me a comment down below to let me know what you think that would actually imply for the metals markets. But if that 261 million ounces isn't there, then I think that it would be a very good time to have your hands on some of your own precious metals. Just my thought. I mean, given the amount of uncertainty here, it makes me just want to keep on stacking, but we may actually get to find out soon. Recently, there was a tweet put out by Zero Hedge where they mentioned that they thought it would be good if Elon Musk and Doge would audit the U.S. gold reserves. Elon Musk actually responded to that tweet, and then you had Rand Paul get in on it. Ron Paul, his dad, has been calling for an audit of U.S. gold reserves for over a decade. A long time ago, he was talking about this. So it could be very eye-opening if we find out that the gold is there, or if it's not. Possibly, if they've been adding to the reserves, we might even, again, get an update to that 261-ounce figure. Maybe we've got more gold than we previously reported, but if that's the case, again, that has some pretty ominous implications of its own. But I would be very interested to get all of your take on this. As I mentioned earlier, we can't be entirely certain about what the implications of these moves are at the moment, but it is going to be very interesting as a stacker to watch these events play out. And given the speed with which events seem to be taking place these days, we might not have to wait long. So if you enjoyed this video, make sure you check out the video that is popping up on your screen right now. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I will catch you next time. Thanks for watching, everybody. Stay safe and happy stacking. Smart Silver Stacker, out.